Hi, everybody. Welcome to Community Conversations. For anybody who's not familiar, I'm Courtney Shaw. I'm the facilitator of the presentation series here, but I love being the facilitator because I get to turn it over to all my lovely guests. And today we have more lovely guests than usual, so I'm very excited about that. That does mean that I'm not going to individually announce everybody. They're sort of going to take care of that themselves. But I do want to say a couple of announcements. Firstly, that our series this quarter is brought to us by a grant from Humanities Washington. So thank you very much, Humanities Washington, for supporting our Community Conversations series. Next week, we're going to have Heidi Bauer presenting on Wild and the Pacific Coast Trail. And warning, there might be some adulty topics and sensitive topics brought up with that one. So, you know, if that's an issue for you, that's okay. But please join us again next week. We have all of our events up on our website with the schedule, the speakers, and the links to either the Zoom if you want to watch over Zoom, or the recordings if you want to watch later on or share it with a friend. So please join us next week again, and every Thursday in the quarter, or join us online anytime you want. But now I would like to welcome this week's guests, and I'm going to introduce the organizer, and then she's going to take it from there. So I would like to say, please welcome Lower Columbia College literature and language instructor, Becky Connolly.
Thank you, Courtney. Can everybody hear okay? All right. I want the organizer as my gang name or something. The organizer would be good. All right. Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. I am, as Courtney said, I'm Becky Connolly. I teach here in the language and literature department. And when Courtney sent out the call late last year for topics, that the topic this time was going to be books that move us, I knew that we had something special to share. And I say we because it's me and my compatriots here. And it's definitely something that we do, that the way that book clubs aren't necessarily unique, but the way that we do our book club is definitely something special. Throughout our talk today, we're going to share with you how our book club started, different themes and traditions that we share, as well as the adventures that we've been on as a group. And along the way, we're going to share specific books that stood out to us, that moved us either individually or as a group. Okay, so I have to get out my teacher skills here. Courtney. It's okay. Go ahead if you can get it to go to the next slide, and I'll just go. Okay. So I have loved books since I was a little girl, and some of my very favorite childhood memories involve reading. And I realized that as I look back, that it wasn't just reading, as much as I love going to different places and experiencing different lives, but it was also sharing that experience with those who are close to me. So I have many childhood memories, and this idea of reading and sharing is a thread that goes throughout my whole life. So I have countless memories of being a little girl, sitting on a stool in front of my mom on Sunday night, and with my long red hair, getting it put into curlers. Anyone remember the little pink soft curlers? Okay, I'm aging myself. So that was how we made it curly for the week. And while we did that, I read out loud to her. And the books that I remember reading out loud to her were a series called The Borrowers. Anyone hear that? Okay, excellent. And they're about tiny little people who lived in the walls and the floors of an English manor and borrowed things from the big people in order to survive. So that was one of my very favorite series that I remember from that time. Fast forward a few years, and on a typical Saturday afternoon, I would ride with my best friend, Julie, who lived just a couple blocks away. We'd ride our bikes, banana seats, flowery baskets in the front. We'd ride to the local library just a few blocks away. We'd get there and we'd peruse the shelves. We'd go through. We got to choose 2 books That was the limit. So we'd check out our 2 books, and then we would go back home and we'd go to one of our houses and we'd sit on the bed and we'd read. We'd read, each of us just silently. And then when there was something really good, we'd turn and we'd share. Okay. So during that time period, the books that really stood out to me was the Wizard of Oz series. Has anyone read these by L. Frank Baum? Okay. There's actually 14 of them. And they were books before they were a movie. And so those books really stood out to me. And then the other ones that stood out at that time was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Anyone remember that one? The women in the room may remember that one. As pre-teens, we thought we were very mature to read this book and talk about it, you know. So sorry, I lost my place there. Okay. Oh, and then the other one that really was the most beloved book during that time was Little Women. Okay. You'll see, this is my copy of Little Women. It is well loved. It has been well read many, many times. And it was a book that stood out to me. I actually got to go to Louisa May Alcott's house where she read and wrote the book. And I'm a rule follower. So they said, don't touch her desk where she wrote Little Women. So I did not. Guess what my husband did? He touched the desk and he brags about it all the time. So the years went by. I got married, graduated college, and began teaching middle and high school English. I remember one particular camping trip with my husband, Mark, and our good friends, Rebecca and Jason Core, where we spent at least 2 glorious summer afternoons sitting in the Sispus River on our camping chairs, reading. All 4 adults just reading on our own. And again, we would turn and talk to someone and tell them when there was something good. Those were the days of the John Grisham books. The Firm, A Time to Kill, Pelican Brief. I see you guys nodding. Okay. That was that summer and what we did. Okay. So in the next couple of years, Mark and I had 2 sons and life got busy, but I still read out loud with my children from the time they were little, but then at night when they got older. My oldest son, Ryan, we read all the Harry Potter series. And then my younger son, who does not claim to be a reader, he had to get his 30 minutes in every night. We read the Rick Riordan series, Percy Jackson series. Has anyone heard of those? Kind of a Greek gods? Okay. So we read those. In 2005, our family moved over the river to Kelso, and I start to felt the yearn again to talk to adults and share my love of reading and share that close time that I had with others. So I started talking to friends and people around me, and you'll notice as people introduce themselves, you'll see a lot of LCC things going on here because that's where I was working. And so we decided to form a book club. So on January 19th, 2006, a wintry evening at my house, about 10 people came together in order to talk about forming a book club. And among the attendees were 5 avid readers. Okay, Courtney, what's the trick? Do I have to click with the mouse? Okay. Oh, there we go. So these are the 5 people that you see in front of you right now. I, at the time, was an instructor and a mom of preteens. Brenda, raise your hand, technology coach, also a mom of preteens. Allison, LCC instructor, and she had adult children at the time. Kathy, also an LCC instructor and was a grandma. And Sara, retired English teacher, and she had adult children at the time as well. So you can see that we had lots of different time periods connected and different ways that we were going through life at that time. Okay. So we didn't want this traditional book club where everyone read the same book and then you talked about it and it felt like homework, right? Someone would pick a book inevitably that you didn't like. There was not enough time to be frittered away reading books that you didn't like. We all had really big to be read shelves. And so we really wanted to do something different where we could talk about books and enjoy them, but not be told which exact book we had to read. Okay, so over the course of a few hours, a different type of book club was born. Our book club would have monthly rotating meetings at members' homes. The hostess would provide some type of dessert with tea. No, we do not drink wine, contrary to what most book clubs believe. There is a close sherry at Christmas time. Okay. And we each month we choose a theme or a genre, which you're going to hear more about in a minute. And each member gets to pick a book that relates in some way to that theme. Our rules are very lax. If you can convince us that it connects to that theme, not that anyone's even going to ask, but if you can connect it, it goes. Okay. We loved our idea and we began meeting, and over the next few months, members came and went. But by May 2006, we were a solid 5 and Laughter and Literature was born. So how does it work? We get together on the 3rd Thursday of every month, 7 o'clock, one of our houses. And the first half is spent catching up, sharing the dessert, talking about life's, joys and sorrows and what's happening with our kids and all of those kinds of things. Notice that our book club is called Laughter and Literature. So laughter always comes first. The second half of our book club is spent talking about literature. So whatever the books are that match the theme that we've chosen for that month, we talk about those books. We each share, because I don't know, has there ever been times when we picked the same book? Maybe a couple times, right? But we share the book. We don't give away the ending because someone else in the book might want to read it, or in the group might want to read it. So we share things that we liked about the book, what caught our attention, what was a particularly well-worded, section or phrase, something we hated, anything that really, drew us to the book that we wanted to share about. And yes, there have still been books that were like, don't bother with this one. We say that, like, just forget it. We tell the story and they're like, nope, no one's going to read that. So, sorry. The meeting ends with deciding who is going to host next. And then whoever is hosting next gets to go to the baggie. It's really high tech. And we're going to talk more about the baggie, but in the baggie are all the different themes that we've generated, or genres. And so we get to pick that. We say goodbye, go back to life, and begin searching for the next book that we're going to read and share on the next month. So now we kind of talked about how it all started. Now I'd like to introduce Kathy Demarest, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the themes and how we actually use those. Okay. Kathy.
Next slide. Thank you. Hi, I am Kathy Demarest, as Becky said. This is not working. I got it way over here. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me okay? All right. I am a retired member of LCC faculty. I taught here for 20 years with students learning reading skills, study skills, and writing skills. And I joined this group not at the very birth, but I joined 5 months later. And I was told by Becky that the first genre that we were going to talk about is science fiction. I was about ready to walk out because I don't read science fiction. But I took a breath and I thought, okay, I have a daughter who just loves science fiction. So I asked her what she would recommend, and she recommended Ender's Game. Anybody know that? Okay. So I read Ender's Game and I was hooked on it. So for about 3 or 4 months afterwards, that's all I was reading was science fiction. So I'm going to chat with you about the themes. You can see lots of words up there because over 16, 17 years, we get lots of themes every month. You heard why we do this. Well, we don't want homework and you're not going to tell me what to read. I'm going to make my choices. We all very inquisitive readers and learners, and we want to be able to tap into us having a choice to what we want to read. So as Becky said, how we do it, we take some time during our book club. And this is also where we tap into our English teacher skills. Brainstorming is a technique that you use with students to help get writing. So what we do is we brainstorm. We just throw out all kinds of ideas. Becky's feverishly writing them all down. They get put into the baggie and then we use those. There's no wrong answers. All of the ideas go into the baggie. So, and Becky has kept track of all of the themes for all of the years that we've been together. So what I did to prepare for this, instead of going all over the place with this, is I put them together sort of in some categories. And I want to share with you some of those categories to give you some how well-rounded our ideas are. And I'll also mention a few of the books that I really liked. So the first area were places. So read a book about Africa. Read a book about another country. Islands. And when that month came up, I chose Independent People of Iceland because my husband and I had recently traveled to Iceland and I wanted to know a little bit more about the Icelandic people. So I chose this book that was written by Halldór Laxness, who is a Nobel Prize winner, who writes about the struggle for independence of this ordinary sheep farmer. And the descriptions were so intense that I remember sitting in my living room reading and just being so intensely in Iceland that I looked up and thought, oh, I'm in my living room. It's really, really good. We also had to read a book with a map, Someplace in the Deep South, New England, Asia, Ireland, Brazil, Spain, India was not a hit. Remember that? Yeah. We also chose a bunch of letters. And by this, what we had to do is when the month came up with that letter, you had to find a book that had that letter in the title. So we had C, S, D, W, K, M, B, R. And when it got to R, I chose Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose and got away with it. One of my favorite categories is kind of like, it's called the year of Pioneer Times, a reread from a book from a childhood of yours that you liked, a book published during your parents' birth, a book published during your year of marriage, and I chose 1994, and I read One True Thing by Anna Quinlan, a book from the Victorian period, the Industrial Revolution, a book published the year a child of yours was born, and we have a wide range here, so that was really good. The Renaissance, the colonial period, a book about your mom's era, and I remember that was a favorite of mine as well. I chose 1946, and I read the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Anybody read that one? It was really, I just loved it. How this tells a tale of a bunch of people in England during World War II that broke the curfew and got together and talked about literature. How cool is that? A book published the year of our birth. I'm not going to go there with you. Something during the women's movement, the 1300s, the 1850s, the 1960s, the 1940s, and I read The Invisible Woman by Roebuck. And of course, as a book club, we have to choose authors. And so what we did is we chose authors who were prolific, and believe it or not, I don't think we had any duplicates when we chose a book and got together for that author to talk about. We've read Kristen Hanna, Maeve Binchy. I read Evening Class. I hadn't read many of hers. Anita Shreve, Isabel Allende, Aunt Perry, Pearl Buck, Daphne du Maurier, Tracy Kidder, who was new to me, and I read Old Friends. Kidder talks about a tale between Lou and Joel, who are roommates at a nursing home, and they become good friends. And Kidder has this amazing way of telling about old people, some of the sadness as well as lots of humor. It's a very good book. Sue Crafton, Jodi Picoult, a male author. Agatha Christie, Margaret Atwood, a female author from the 2000s, an author that shares your first or last name. And I'll have to tell you, that was very hard finding a Kathy or a Demarest. Then we had a group that I just called general topics. And one of them that was in the baggie was a road trip. And for this one, I got back in touch with Walk Across America by Peter Jenkins. And this was really cool for me because it got me back in touch with my earlier days in the 60s and 70s when I first started making road trips. Power and Corruption, Magic, a singer-songwriter, Tale of Courage. And for this one, I read Short Nights of a Shadow Catcher by Timothy Egan. And I have to stop and tell you about this book. It's one of my very, very favorites. Timothy Egan writes this biography of Edward Curtis, who at the age of 32 in the early 1900s, self-taught himself photography. And he decided it was his passion to photograph as many indigenous people as he could in the country, because he saw that we were going to lose that generation and lose that culture. And the book is very moving. And besides being a really good biography, Egan includes some of his very, very famous photos. So it's really a good book to check out. Read a book with a protagonist who has a different viewpoint from yours. Something medical, celestial beings, flowers, food, animals, seasons, trees, believe it or not. And I read Overstory. Anybody read that one before? Jewelry. I read Hot Ice by Nora Roberts. I haven't read very many of Nora Roberts. That was a good one. Metals, Earth, and another favorite author of mine, Barbara Kingsolver. I read hers, The Flight Behavior, Air, Wind, Fire, Water. I noticed when I went back through the list that in the 2006, we really stuck to the genres. So the genres were nonfiction, classics, biographies, science fiction, as you heard, mystery. And then we branched out into a young adult, romance, chick lit, paranormal, horror and thriller, another one that's not high on my list. But I read The First Horseman by John Case. I have to tell you, that was a thriller, and I kept turning those pages. And then lastly, I'm just going to include a hodgepodge of others. A book that's on the New York Times bestseller list. A book that was made for movie. And I started out, I had seen Out of Africa as the movie, and then I read the book, and the book stood up just fine. A book that has been on your bookshelf the longest, waiting to be read. A used book, a bestseller that you haven't read, a Pacific Northwest author, an author's debut novel, an influential woman. And for this one, I read In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. She was an escapee from North Korea, and she wrote about her tale of getting out of North Korea. It's a very strong book, and she went on to continue to help other people escape North Korea. A book in which the author's first language is not English. That was a good challenge. A Loner, a book found by a book review. And for this one, I read Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. And I love that one because it got me back in touch with my travels in France when I was a college student. So that was a nice treat as well. A book that you do choose by its cover. A book on Reese Witherspoon's book list. A book on Oprah's book list. A book recommended by an independent bookstore. A book recommended by a librarian. And you know they have to know a lot about books. A book with a number in its title, a book that is first in the series, a book that's recommended by a younger person. So I have to tell you that now that we have these different themes and ideas, I just love investigating and stretching myself to read other kinds of things. There's so many books out there. I don't think I'm ever going to run out of choices. And now I'm going to introduce Allison, who's going to tell you about some of our traditions.
Are you okay? Well, good morning. I am delighted to be here. I taught with Becky and Kathy for over 20 years in the English department. And so now I'm retired, but lovely to be back. Over the 17 years that the Laughter and Literature Book Club has been together, we've developed some little traditions. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of them. Every January, we have our anniversary dinner. So this January, we will sit down and break bread together for the 17th time. During COVID, we had carry out. So we didn't break the whole thing. We go to a local Chinese restaurant, which has a large round table, which kind of meets our needs. And also is conveniently distanced from the other diners. So they don't really hear us. I have, as we've been exiting the restaurant, I have seen some eyebrows raised. And I'm not sure if people are just jealous that we're having a great time and they're not, or they think we're just a bunch of loud women. So I'm not sure which it is, but anyway, that's always fun. During our meetings, we have a wonderful selection of teas and desserts, no wine. We don't drink wine at our meetings, but we make up for it with desserts. Kathy introduced me to a tea called honeybush tea. It's an African tea. I'd never heard of it. I just love it. So it's not just books that I'm learning about tea as well. So that's always good. At the end of each meeting, we decide on the next date. And that's been very flexible because people have family commitments and they have travel commitments. And so we kind of, roughly every month, but we kind of move around so that we include everybody. The hostess pulls the next theme from this bag that Becky showed you. And this is, that's always that person gets to choose something. Occasionally they'll take something out and go, I don't think I like this. I'll just put it back and choose another one. But usually we do pretty well. Of late, we've been choosing, instead of one theme a month, we've been choosing 2 themes so that we've got enough time to really choose the right book for the second one. And so, for example, our next book that we're doing is the one that we received in the Christmas book gift exchange. Every Christmas, we each bring a new book, wrap it up, put it under the tree, then pull one out, and it's a surprise. The one that I've got this time is a 12th century mystery set in England, which is very appropriate because I really like mysteries. And I just bought tickets this week to go to England for a wedding. So it fits me in different levels there. So that's good. The next month after that, this one I just love. The next month, the theme is a culture unknown to you. And that to me is just like, wow, what am I going to read? I thought at first about Amish culture because I don't know much about Amish culture, but then that's just one possibility. There's like 1,000 other possibilities that I could go to. So that's going to be fun to think about that and find something. At the end of our meetings, we often exchange books that we've read or we brought to discuss. If somebody said, oh, I'd like to read that one, somebody said, well, take it and bring it back the next time. So we have kind of an exchange of books at the end of the meeting if people want to have something else to read. So there's always something good to read, which is good. So I think that these little traditions enhance our book club. They certainly make it more fun for me. I enjoy it. I find that this book club has been refreshingly different from others that I've been involved in that we have a theme which is absolutely wide open. And so each person can choose whatever interests them under that theme. And then when we come together, you hear all kinds of different aspects of the same theme. So that's been really fun. This book club has also encouraged me to broaden the genre that I read. I always was reading nonfiction, very serious. And then this book club put me on 1 month we had to read mystery. And I thought, I have never read a mystery. What is this going to be like? I'm telling you, they know this. I am now completely hooked on mysteries. I mean, I read at least one a week. I am just completely hooked on them and love them. So that's one of the things that this book club has done is kind of open up other paths that I wouldn't have thought about reading. So that's been good for me. I've learned lots of new things. For instance, I learned about the blue people of Kentucky. I didn't know anything about that. That was fascinating to me. And I read a biography of Barbara Streisand, and I learned where I'm not telling anything rude. It says, I've learned where Barbara Streisand likes to keep her gardenias. And if anybody wants to know the answer to that, they can ask me afterwards. It was quite shocking to me, but each to their own. So I think best of all, I think for me, the company and the laughter of my friends has been very enriching. And I can tell it's enriching because every time I drive home from book club, I just feel like I'm all filled up, you know. I just feel, wow, that was good. And I'm happy. And that's worth its weight in gold. So that's my little contribution. Next, we have Brenda. We'll talk about our trip. Okay. Yeah.
So after we met for about 1.5 years, we decided that since we get on so well with one another, that it might be kind of fun to take a trip or two. So pretty early on, we scheduled a trip and kind of got a tradition born of taking several trips. I'm going to give you kind of an overview, and then I'm going to talk about some specific ones. Basically, we usually stay in an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast. We go somewhere that we're all interested in. We will have a meal in. We usually stop at a grocery store and buy whatever we like. And when I've traveled with other groups, there's always that, well, I bought this and we got to divide it up and I'll give you this money. We don't fool with any of that. We just kind of all buy and nobody's keeping track. So that's been really nice. Also, when I travel, usually I travel with my family, which involves me making all of the plans and organizing all the meals and doing a lot of the work. My husband always says it's a trip, not a vacation. When I travel with these ladies, it feels like a vacation because we share the responsibility. So it becomes very easy and very casual. Allison came down one morning and I had already started the coffee and she was just aghast that somebody else had made the coffee. So it's really nice to travel with ladies where everybody just kind of pitches in and gets something done. We have very similar likes. And so we usually will take a hike or a walk. We often will go downtown, and for some reason, it's a mystery, but we usually end up in a bookstore or 2 or 3 and just wander for hours. And so some of us don't have family that would support that behavior, but amongst us, we could just be in bookstores for a long time. So that's been really fun. We also will just get cozy in wherever we are staying and spend hours quietly reading. It kind of stems from Becky's early friendship where they sat and read together. In my family, there'd be a little judgment there if I was on vacation and spent hours reading, but here there is no judgment. We can just read the day away and nobody says a word. On our vacations is where we have generated the baggie list. Sometimes we've done it at book club, but a lot of times it's been when we've been on a trip together and we just get creative and brainstorm our list for the baggie. And I have to tell you, we do break the wine rule when we're on vacation. That might give you some insight into some of the ones that end up on the baggie. Nobody has to drive anywhere, so it's all well and good.
What happens at book club stays at book club.
True. So those are some kind of general things that we do on our trips, but I want to talk about some specific ones. So our very first one was to Ashland, Oregon, where we decided we wanted to take in a couple of plays. And so we went to see As You Like It by Shakespeare. And that was our book. We actually all read the same book that month, which was unusual. We don't normally do that. And I don't think we've read Shakespeare since, yeah. But we did read As You Like It because that's the play we were seeing. And we also saw Chekhov, The Cherry Orchard, stayed in a lovely Airbnb that's a picture of it, very quaint, and just really enjoyed ourselves. Ashland's a lovely town and it was fun being there. On the drive, and the book, wait, I talked about the book I read for that one. On the drive home, it's a few hour drive. As teachers and English lovers, we decided to spend our time brainstorming the plot of a book that would be a wonderful book to publish. We even had aspirations of actually writing this book. I think that fizzled a bit, but maybe at some point, I think it would be a really good book. It's about a group of book club who go to stay at a bed and breakfast that has a mystery. And so at some point, maybe we'll get back to writing the book. Yeah, so that's big ideas for Ashland. The next trip we took was, and these are usually on spring break when our spring breaks aligned. I teach for Kelso School District. These gals were all at LCC. So we usually were able to find some kind of overlap, but a few of our vacations were either in the winter or in the summer. This was another spring one. We went to Cave Creek, Arizona. We also visited Sedona. We went to Taliesin West, which was a Frank Lloyd Wright building, which was gorgeous and beautiful to see. There's a little picture of it, that one in the top middle. And then we decided it would be fun to go on a hike, and there was a park nearby and they advertised a blooming desert stroll. So as soon as we get there, we see a sign that says the blooming desert stroll has been canceled, but it looked pretty easy. You know, there's a trail. It's pretty obvious where you're going to go. It is the desert, so nothing's hiding the path. And so we decide we'll just go on our own. Have any of you ever hiked in the desert? Okay, what we found when you hike in the desert is it looks like you haven't gone very far, but it can take forever. So we looped around on the trail the whole time we could see our car, but felt like, was it 12 hours, Becky? I'm thinking the hike was 18 hours, maybe. It felt like it went on forever. And of course, we went in the morning when it was nice and cool, and then it got really hot. We had our little bottles of water that were done partially in, and it just felt like forever till we got back. So Becky had a little mild case of heat exhaustion by the time we were done, and we decided we were going to stay the rest of the day in the house when we got back. So all of us, so it's one of our inner jokes is, oh, should we go on a blooming desert hike? No. So beware if you ever advertised a blooming desert hike. The book I read for that one was, we had to read a Southwest book. And so I read The Desert Rose by Larry McMurtry, which was a fun book to read. But we try to pick sometimes the theme to go with wherever we travel to. We've taken several trips to the beach. There's a Clipson Cottage, the A-frame in the lower corner is a place we've gone a couple of times, and it's a lovely place because there's a room for all of us, and there's a fireplace, and it's just within a walk to the beach. And this is a couple of places where we've just gotten cozy and spent a lot of time inside. Just enjoyed ourselves. There's a lighthouse theme in the Clipson Cottage in the A-frame, and somehow we got wind that there was a certain number of lighthouses, and if you figure out like there was a contest or something. So we spent the weekend, being all the type A people that we are, very methodically going through the house and counting all of the lighthouses. I can't remember the number, it was in the hundreds. And so we went up to the office and said, you know, this is how many lighthouses we found. What is our prize? And they were like, we don't really know what the right answer is, and there is no prize. You guys are the only ones that have ever done anything with that. So we were hugely disappointed. We've also gone to Cannon Beach. Sara has a home there that she's opened up to us, and we've just had a lot of fun. One of the books I've read for the beach trip is Anne Lindbergh's Gifts by the Sea, or Gifts from the Sea, which is a lovely book. If you haven't ever read that, it's just really nice. And that was a fun one to share. While we were at the cottage, the first time, Becky got a message from her husband saying, "You're not going to believe what you got in the mail, a jury duty summons." And we all sympathized with Becky, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, jury duty, how am I going to handle that?" And I said, you know what? I have never ever. I've been a registered voter since I was 18 years old, and I've never been called for jury duty. That was my first mistake. What did I have waiting for me when I got home? A jury duty summons, same day as Becky. Long story short, we end up on the same jury. The chances of that happening, I can't even imagine, but we ended up on the same jury, sitting in the same group of however many people. And yeah, 12. I guess that's what it is with the jury. I didn't have a lot of experience before this. And so we were able to, it was actually kind of fun. We were able to spend time together to serve with the jury, but that's kind of a memory from when we were there. Our next trip was to Newport, and there is a lovely hotel called the Sylvia Beach Hotel. Anybody familiar with it? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. It is a hotel for book lovers. Each of the room has an author theme or a book theme. And we stayed in the Ken Kesey One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest room. So it's kind of set up like a, I don't know, like a sanitarium or something. And Becky and I ended up in the John Steinbeck room, but they have all kinds of author rooms. And then any room that's open during like the switchover, you can go in and tours. There's a Harry Potter room. I think there was a Lewis Carroll Hobbit room. Any others you guys remember? If you go to their website, you can see all of them. They changed some out to kind of make them more current, but they also had a meal that they would prepare, like, which was down in kind of a restaurant down below. And they had big round tables, and you didn't always sit by yourself, like you could sit with other people. And so our group sat with some other folks, and they were fascinated by hearing about our book club, and we got to meet some people. So that was really fun. The next one was Astoria. And so we stayed in a house that sat up on the hill and was able to look over the harbor, which was really cool. And we were able to see there's a cruise that comes in. I don't know if it's Carnival, but one of the cruises stops in Astoria, and we got to watch all of the people come off and wander around through the town. And that was a fun one also. And our final excursion, COVID kind of messed us up and we need to get back into it, was Queen Mary Tea Room in Seattle. Is anybody familiar with that? That's a lot of fun. If you like tea, if you're a tea lover, you go in and they have loose leaf teas, and everybody gets their own little teapot, and they make the tea in front of you, and they serve a high tea with, scones and jams and sandwiches and all kinds of good stuff. And so we dressed up and had a day in Seattle and enjoyed a tea party. So we also went to the tea house in Longview. It's not open anymore, the one that was out by Papa Pete's. So we enjoyed that. So we've had a lot of adventures. I hope we have more adventures to come. These ladies are great to travel with, and it's just always a joy. So next is Sarah. Yeah, you should. Sarah.
Okay. Before COVID, do we all remember that time? PAL Books and often the Portland Arts Association would sponsor authors to come and speak in Portland, usually at the Civic, but sometimes in that big upstairs room at PAL's. So our book club would go to Portland, eat out, and then go to hear the author. And that's part of the really good thing about a book club, is you have company to do that, and we take turns driving. Needless to mention, that's not going on right now. One of the people we went to hear was Isabel Allende, who has had a very interesting life. Her writing really reflects that. She is from Chile and has been called the world's most widely read Spanish language author. And what's interesting is she writes in Spanish, but she has the same English translator over all of her books. At least that's what she told us then. I don't know if it's still true. Her novels pay homage to the lives of women. For example, Daughter of Fortune, A Long Petal of the Sea, The Japanese Lover, and many more. She worked as a journalist and then, advised by Paulo Neruda, she started to write fiction in Spanish. So she's writing in her birth language. Her novels have been translated into more than 40 languages. She follows a very strict schedule. She's a real disciplined writer, and she writes from 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday. She really works at it. Jodi Picoult has published 28 novels. She went to Princeton and is considered one of their most influential alums. Her books have been translated into 34 languages, and 4 have been made into TV movies. She says her favorite book, and I love this, is Gone with the Wind. And she read it when she was 13. Me too. She has also remembers how thrilled she was to get a library card. She does extensive research. She's really into that for each of her books. They can be characterized as family sagas. That's kind of the publisher. You know, they're always looking for ways to sell the books. So that's their kind of designation. When she came to Portland, she spoke at the Temple about the storyteller. A couple of her other novels are Wish You Were Here, and I love this title, Mad Honey. Margaret Atwood is a Canadian who has published numerous books, novels, poetry, and nonfiction. She's received 2 Booker Prizes, which is pretty amazing, and among many other awards. So she's a well-recognized author. She did not attend school until she was 12 years old, which to me was kind of fascinating. I looked everywhere to find out what did she do before 12, but I couldn't really find anything. And at her time, I guess there was homeschooling, but I couldn't find that. She taught at the university level, and I love this quote. She has said that success for me meant no longer having to teach at university, which I can get behind after 30 years of teaching English and spending hours reading student writing, sometimes terrible student writing. This is really interesting. She holds a patent on a remote robotic writing technology. So she, I think, was looking for a way to make it easier, less physical. She has stated all girls may be able to grow up believing that there are no avenues that are closed to them simply because they are girls. That's a good one. The list of her writing is extensive and includes nonfiction, poetry, and children's literature. Some of them are, and I know you've heard of this one, The Handmaid's Tale. That was really well marketed. Then Life Before Man. I couldn't find that one, but I want to read it. And Year of the Flood.
Well, you may have heard us refer to when we started, and it happened to be January 19th, 2006. What's today? We did not ask for this date. It came to us just serendipitously. And so we thought it had to be right that we were doing this today. So thank you so much for being here. We have enjoyed sharing what we do with this book club. And if you've liked any little part of it, create your own book club. There are no rules. The biggest thing is about reading and sharing that with those you love. And as we end, we wanted to have you all be a part of our tradition of how we end book club as well. So you've heard us talking about the baggie. We have next month's theme, but we don't have the theme after that. So does anyone have a birthday or an anniversary on January 19th? Is January 19th special for anybody? Oh, wait, thanks, Chris, all the way to the back. Okay. Oh yeah, you want to run? Okay. So Chris, Brenda's bringing the baggie to you. You get the honor. We're all going to be at your house next month. You get the honor of choosing Oh, a debut book by an author over 50. Okay. So there it is. So there's your challenge if you want to join us. That's what we're going to be reading in March. So everybody go forth and figure that out. Let us know, share what you started reading. So
we have a couple minutes if people want to ask any questions. So raise your hand if you have a question and we'll bring that over. So here's.
What's chick lit?
anything that women might like that's a little racy. We also had one that was kick-ass women. Sara, I think that was the one that you had suggested. So
Because I don't usually like the things that other women like.
Other questions? Okay.
India has a grand literary fiction tradition. So I'm just curious, what was the India themed book that was so unpopular?
I think Brenda actually, it wasn't just one book. It was all different books that we chose. I don't even remember off the top of my head right now which one I read. We just all, it's unusual when we all come together and we go like, I just didn't really enjoy this book very much. But Brenda, you liked yours. Do you remember what?
Can't remember the exact name. It had something to do with spices, but it was little short stories and they were all set in India. And I felt like I had a window into their culture in that book. I could look it up on my Goodreads, but yeah, so I liked my India book. The other ladies did not. Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Let me see. Okay.
What if you choose a category that a person can't find a book in?
Yeah, we have it. Our categories are pretty open and we can be really flexible in our interpretations of the themes. So, and if someone comes and says they've read a book and it's, it's a bit of a stretch, nobody's going to judge them. We're all okay with it. Yeah, and I think I had to pick my middle name. I think I had to pick my middle name because Brenda Sargent, there's not a lot of Brendas out there that are writers. Yeah. So my middle name.
And I had to go from Kathy to Katrina to find something.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair right there. I was
Make it
thinking the
work.
same thing as like, I might go middle name on something like that. Okay, let's make this our last question.
It's not a question, but a comment. I remember the books that I read as a young person, and I think they kind of form your character a little bit, but I read The Boxcar Children, and I just absolutely love that. And I'm looking back on it, I think that was so much me too, because I could have been one of those kids that went out in the middle of nowhere and found a boxcar and stayed there. And I'm sure you find that true too, that if you go back and look at what you read as a child, that they kind of formed you. Anyway, thank you. Appreciated this very much.
Thank you to all our speakers. Thanks for sharing your unique the book club and how you do it. And I love the idea of like, you're not going to tell me what to read. That I wrote that down. And thank you all for joining us. And please come back again next week for Heidi Bauer's presentation and visit our little library corner in the back here. Lindsay Kiwi's got some books for us. So thank you and see you again.